We are just right now probably 75 yards away from the building where the source of the contamination in the large downtown plume that bedeviled this town for a number of years.
So if you could maybe introduce yourself.
Okay. I'm Chuck Thralley. I guess I would best be described as a retired librarian. I'm about 2 months away from my 80th birthday. Morgan County has been home to me now, since 1989. We lived in Martinsville from 1989 to 2004, which was the period of time when the contamination started to become known, and in the period of time before the water was being treated. We are just now in 2031 beginning to get fairly clean vapor readings coming out of the ground. When it was turned over as a Superfund site for the federal government to come in and take over, it became kind of a bone of contention for several years on does it need cleaned up right away, what
terrible.
needs to be done.
But we're going here to this alley. And this building we're looking at here with the yellow brick, that back half of it is where the pumps and everything are that the EPA used when they were doing that remediation work here.
It was a business that was on the town square in the courthouse of the county seat.
IDEM was in charge of it.
And right across the street from it,
here,
an industrial dry cleaners operated, which spilled chemicals.
Monitoring wells, Morris and Dubuque.
Tetrachloroethane, I believe, is the chemical name for it.
Basically, little well covers, metal well covers.
Where the tanks still are, and the pumps right here in this building.
Okay, right in this building, it's like white cinder block.
Yeah. No, look here.
Breaks down into
more
PCEs and
wells.
TCEs,
Here,
which are some of those forever chemicals that you hear
all the way
about.
down there.
There were a number of 50-gallon
There's the old jail that was
drums when
converted
the
by
company
some
went
people to,
bankrupt that were found in the basement.
But these,
When they actually went out of business in 91 was when it became obvious how much had been spilled and was still there.
How many would you say there are?
there's at least 28.
20. Okay.
Because see, they're all here, there.
When it
That's the
started
Montessori school over there.
to become obvious that there was water
That sort of house, that yellow.
That yellow one.
contamination
And then you see
in
there's
primarily
a-
one of the wells that supplied the city. They had a water test which showed the level of the PCE in the water was well above what was a safe level, and people had been drinking it for some time at that point.
And this is now like residential. It's like there's a,
residential, yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like a couple of houses with gardens right across the street from like an old auto shop. Actually, no,
Various
it's still an auto
solutions
shop.
were tried through the years.
You'll see over here on the street, some of them are, these cars are parked over them, but you'll see more of these wells.
Public information was always a little
Right there.
behind the curve as they were trying to get a handle on what they needed to do to be safe and meet federal regulations and not to scare people. Although not scaring people meant that people were drinking water they shouldn't have been drinking. We lived about 3 blocks from the courthouse, so we were within about 4 blocks of the Masterware facility. We drank city water. We had a 100-year-old 2-story home with a crawl space, a partial crawl space, and a partial basement. Water, of course, leaked in times of flood. So we were being exposed both to whatever vapors were there at the time and whatever got mixed in with the groundwater to run in and to be pumped out through the sump pump. Well, we had 2 daughters who were born in 78 and 1981. They were both teenagers at the time we were living in the exposure area. One story of Lauren at about 13, there had been a stray cat running around our neighborhood that we kept saying couldn't come in the house. She had a bunch of kittens in a falling down barn across the alley from our house. My wife and I came home from work to find these kittens inside the house, and Lauren earnestly telling us that the mother kitten had brought them one at a time, carried them to our back step, and at this point they were already in the house. And her sister, who's 3 years younger, had just kind of nodded and said yes, she just showed up with them. It probably took 4 years for one of the girls to finally spill the beans that Lauren had gone over and fought the mother cat to get a hold of the kittens and bring them back to the house. Lauren, she married a businessman who owned property in town, a number of rental properties. The two homes that they lived in during their marriage were at the edges of the plume. In 2003, when her son was born, she experienced a fairly rare a condition called peripartum cardiomyopathy, or postpartum periomyopathy, which is swelling of the heart. It's one of those things that there are almost no signs of during the pregnancy, and within a few weeks of the pregnancy, she was in the hospital and potentially on a heart donor list. Had heart failure at one point from it in the hospital. We were living, we had moved in with her husband, who briefly to help take care of Eli, our grandson, because he, of course, was overwhelmed with a new baby and a wife in the hospital, who they were talking at one point of flying to St. Louis for a heart transplant. Eventually, she had a defibrillator in place and was stabilized to the point that they felt like her heart had recovered, but that she was going to need the defibrillator and constant monitoring. She stood a little over 5 foot tall and weighed at times slightly less than 100 pounds. So having a defibrillator implanted in her chest was a pretty big deal. So for basically the next 12 years, she was monitored with that. The one thing that both of Eli's parents always did was to try to make him feel perfectly safe. After their divorce, Lauren and Eli lived with us for a few years. We had enough room, and he got to spend time with his father, got to live with us out in the woods. His father made sure that he was the first one in our addition to have his own dirt bike when he was about 7. And when he started riding it up and down the gravel lane in the area within about 3 weeks. Other kids started getting getting dirt bikes. I know people talk about the dreaded "they come back," but it was nice to be able to help and to work with her getting back on her feet again. And eventually, when she did find work that was substantial to where she felt like she could maintain a home, Edwin made sure that she would have an apartment.
Edwin is
Eli's father. But Edwin had one of the better houses that he had them in for a while. When I found out more about the plume, was in an area that near a ball field that was another hot spot. We were never exactly sure whether living in the contamination area had anything to do with her medical problems. It's not something that I have found listed as a result of PCE contamination, but you always have to wonder. You always have to wonder what might have there was some suspicion that she might have the beginning symptoms of MS. Had the defibrillator replaced one time at that point, and the battery was going down. Had an ablation performed in her heart because she was starting to get weird rhythms and palpitations. And in a surgery to remove that defibrillator and to make it possible for her to have MRIs to diagnose more of what was going on, a artery or vein in her heart was ruptured, and she was on the operating table for over 8 hours before she died. Again, whether that was a direct result of the contamination, I'll never be able to say conclusively. It left our grandson Eli with his father, who is blind and diabetic. Does have a very successful business, but a number of his rental properties were over the plume. One group was going door to door, finding out what people knew, what they were concerned about. It's a hard slog sometimes in organizing, and I have developed a real admiration for people who can lay the case out and get people to work together, because I think once people understand first that there's a problem, second that the problem is not being effectively addressed, and three, that the only way to get it addressed is to make it important to the people who have the resources to do something about it. Luckily, there were initially a few concerned people who had technical expertise who kept it on the front burner. By 2020, the city government was actually trying very hard to try to do something that, in conjunction with the EPA, would protect people.
Tell me about Eli.
He is my one grandson, and he is the most amazing grandson one could hope to have. As he and Lauren moved on, he became interested in magic, and I had tried to get him interested in guitar off and on through the years, and he had played a little bit of harmonica with me. I think, well, the 7th grade, I think he used the guitar as, I wish I could, this has been, 13, 14 years ago at least now. But he used the guitar as a prop in a magic trick, playing some blues licks. And by his sophomore year, auditioned with the jazz band at the high school. From early on, he was focusing on wanting to get into Berklee School of Music in Boston. That was a few really scary years as he finished up his high school, got the auditions in.
So what did he do?
He got into Berklee. And he stuck with it, and he's currently teaching a couple of adjunct courses. He is staying fairly busy with local music groups, doing studio work with them, and has continued to compose.
Is there a particular moment recently that you've gotten to see him really be the fullest self that's made you feel proud?
One of the musicians he studied with at Berklee had passed through and played at the Chatterbox in Indianapolis last year, and just going to see him working as a pro, someplace I could drive up to, because my eyesight's not what it used to be. 10 years ago, I'd have driven in a heartbeat to Chicago to see him. But to see him was just as much a delight as I could possibly hope to have. I'm kind of a glass half empty kind of guy, and the glass isn't much to speak of either. But I'm actually feeling much better right now about Martinsville. You can feel it here today. The downtown is fairly busy right now, even at this time of the morning. A lot of people coming in and out they've finished up the breakfast rush at a couple of the restaurants, but people are still walking around with their coffee. The people from the courthouse, the workers are coming back in with their coffee. The day spa for nails and various exercise and pampering activities has been in business for about 12 years now. Still seems to be doing just fine. See a lot of people coming in and out of there. It's right across from the courthouse entrance. It's been a long time coming, and still a ways to go. But it's happening, and the people are better off for it.
I have maybe just one more question, and it's about Lauren and the health struggles that she had, and then, about losing her, and the pollution. You said a couple times that there was really no way to know to what degree the pollution may or may not have played into her health problems. I'm curious if you could know if there was a direct link there. Would you want to know that? Would it make it better to know that? Would it make it worse?
Yeah, I think to actually know that the irresponsible acts of a bad businessman dumping poison into the city that he was doing business in was directly responsible for losing her would give me a focus for rage, but I'm not sure that it would be fruitful. Yeah, I regret every day that Lauren's not here to see what a fine young man she raised and how big and how much he's inherited his mother's heart.
This is How to Survive the Future, a show about today from an imagined tomorrow. The show is produced by me, Alex Chambers, in collaboration with Allison Quantz, whose editorial vision and all-around insight made the show possible. Allison also came up with our title. Our theme music is Soft Skin by Amy Olsner. We have additional music from Ramon Monraz Sender, Backward Collective and Last Ledges, and Airport People. Thanks to Molly Weiler and Kate Young for additional editorial support. Special thanks to Chuck Thrally for imagining himself into the future. How to Survive the Future is produced in partnership with Indiana Humanities, with funding from the National Endowment for the Humanities and with further support from the Writers Guild of Bloomington. Thanks for listening.